Thank you so much for being out here with all of us today. It's been an awesome day of just seeing some great projects, not just present their ideas, but also give some demonstrations live outside. So before anything, thank you so much to the DePIN and Parasail teams for putting this together. It's been an awesome event. And just to wrap it up, we have, I think this is the last panel actually, one last panel here today with some of the top founders and ecosystem partners across the DePIN space, across a bunch of chains. And so this panel is about multi-DePIN infrastructure. Put simply, what that means is, DePIN projects that support projects not just on their chain to build one unique product, but maybe that build infrastructure that can be supported across a bunch of different chains. So you're going to hear from some of these founders and ecosystem leads today on what they're doing in their ecosystems and how they're using this multi-DePIN architecture to build and power all sorts of new types of consumer experiences and products. So, before we get into anything, we've got a great lineup here today. I want to just give each person a minute to explain their project and how they got started and how they got into the space. Maybe if we start with Ranveer over there on that side and then just go this way, we can do it that way.
Perfect. Hi everyone, I'm Ranveer. I'm the co-founder of Witness Chain. So what we are building at Witness Chain is essentially a layer that enables consensus on physical state. A clear application of this is for DePIN, where you want to verify physical attributes rather than just digital attributes. So what I mean by physical attributes? This is your location, your connectivity, compute, and so on. Once you achieve this trust on physical attributes of DePINs, you can now enable coordination across DePINs, across financial protocols, and so on. So what you're building is essentially a pattern. Think of blockchains. Blockchains are for digital paper contracts. We are for physical. Any contract.
Hey guys, Ashton, Openmesh Network. So I got into Web3 back in 2015. And then did a lot of work with like L1 chains like Phantom. Openmesh we started in 2020. The idea of like a Tor network, but being able to run workloads and also have a Oracle network on top. So that's Openmesh. So we've been building for the last 4 years. Our main value proposition at the moment is immutable storage and immutable hosting and immutable databases. So we've got a couple of interesting products that we developed. Still experimenting a lot of things. For me, one of the big problems when Web3, a lot of AWS and GCP try to gobbling up our industry, especially like the critical infrastructure like front ends, databases that we want to Web3. That was a big challenge for me. So we tried to bring that Web3 back into the Web3 community by giving the better version of AWS. So that's all my question.
For us, we on the demand side is we have all these amazing projects working on incentivizing nodes to join their network, providing a specific services or a stack of services for application developers to use. But then, how do we solve the accessibility element of allowing everyone, also people, to join these network acting as a node to contribute their provision of compute resources into this network? The other side is how do we allow for resource usage more effectively, provided by these different DePIN networks. So we're acting as the distribution layer, the routing layer, or the control plane, so that we can bring in that accessibility element in DePIN for people, for application developer, for the service aggregator side of things, and then for average user and professional miners to participate into my provision different resources.
Hey guys, I'm Quinn. I lead DePIN efforts at the Solana Foundation. I've been doing this for about 3.5 years now. And in terms of like what has us so excited about DePIN, why we're so focused on it, I'll just say a couple things. Like one is I think I think it's probably not a controversial statement with this audience. DePIN's probably the best chance crypto has of really demonstrating like a very clear, obvious use of crypto that the normal person can understand. Oh, why is this good? And so that very simple articulation is why we're really excited about DePIN. Why actually we started working on it before many in sort of the crypto world broadly. And in terms of like what we're trying to do to accelerate this sort of multi-DePIN world, I think there's a few things. One is making sure that Solana as a piece of technology solves the problems, sort of basic level problems or things that DePIN projects want to build. Sort of being able to easily create a token, reward users with it, manage governance, all those things like we want Solana to be very fast and cheap for. The other thing we think about, this is maybe a little bit less talked about, but I think it's still worth mentioning, is the sort of user and contributor side of this. I actually think that in the future, being a contributor to a DePIN protocol is going to be sort of like participating in the gig economy today. It's a pretty socially, culturally accepted behavior to partake in, and we want to make sure that Solana is sort of a best-in-class experience for that as well, to sort of try and bring that future forward. So I'm always, spending my nights and weekends thinking about how do you make Solana as a technology better for builders and for contributors.
I agree with almost all of that. I think the point isn't lost on us that, in the aftermath of everything that happened in 2022, there was just so much vitriol, so much confusion that emerged out of crypto. And one of the things that makes me so confident and excited about DePIN is it's just very easy to explain in a lot of cases. It's very easy to grok why it's actually valuable and how people can use it. And with anything infrastructure related, it's generally a multi-decade effort, but it's pretty obvious even up front how some of these things might reshape the way that we compute and we sort of interact with the internet. With that said, interoperability, collaboration, working together, they're all buzzwords in crypto, the things you hear about all the time. I think one of the really interesting things with this set of panel participants is they're all building solutions that either in a wholly encompassing way or in a modular kind of way provide different services that as a whole contribute a huge amount of value to the ecosystem. So, would love to start again with Ranveer if you don't mind, but what do you see as the key advantages of building with a multi-DePIN infrastructure versus, kind of doing everything yourself? And can you give us some examples of, how you're using your project today, Witness Chain, to, drive outcomes that are differentiated versus someone who would be building everything themselves?
Exactly. So let's focus on what the advantage of DePIN is understandable, but the competition is not DePIN versus other crypto, it's DePIN versus pins. Right? What's you want to replace, or not replace, but you want to compete with AWS, your Teslas and AT&Ts. How would you be able to do it? So the prime advantage of DePIN is A, economics, and B, permissionless coordination. Why are blockchains powerful? Because they allow permissionless coordination. One DeFi app can talk to other DeFi app without a business deal between those two companies. And that is enabled in blockchains because you can trust other smart contracts. What we are doing is we are enabling a builder or a DeFi to trust another DeFi without actually signing any sort of legal contracts. Because these are global spanning systems where legal contracts don't happen. So I think that's how we are trying to enable multiple DePINs. When you're talking about interoperability, one thing that hurts interoperability a lot is difference in standards. So when I'm transferring assets from chain A to chain B, let's say, taking the blockchain example, I'm exposing myself to the risk of the consensus mechanism in chain. I need to go and understand, is this in the double spend, what's the security? So difference in standards and difference in security leads to a lot of friction when two projects need to collaborate. And having a shared validation layer, in some sense, helps them to collaborate without even thinking about it. That's what we're building. So what we're building essentially is a watchtower network. This watchtower network has huge amounts of crypto-economic security behind it. So in our case, we have around ETH price fluctuates, but we are around 7 billion plus in cryptographic security. That means that any DePIN can be rest assured that, okay, other participating DePIN is not lying about its attributes, because lying would require $3.5 billion. So yeah, essentially that's how we try to unify all DePINs into one single.
Yeah, it's bringing truth and verification into the ecosystem of physical projects to begin with, and making sure no one's gaming, making sure no one is acting adversely in the background. I know a lot of projects that are already using Witness Chain in very interesting ways, so excited to see how that develops. Maybe next we go to Ashley, if you could talk a little bit about it, Openmesh. Similar sort of question, what do you see the primary advantages of the multi-DePIN architecture, and how are you sort of dealing with that and operating with that already today?
I think one of the things that we need to acknowledge in our space, we are very, very tiny, right? We feel like, yes, DePIN is big, you see a lot of faces here, but compared to like AWS and GCP, like hyper clouds, we are very tiny. So in traditional non-Web3 context, so you could build, you get your product, talk to your users, have your product market fit, and go to market. But in our space, you have to look at how do you build your minimum viable ecosystem. Now, that's challenging, right? Because, our space moves really fast. Even if you work 7 days, it's not enough. How can you relevant yourself to the changes that happen? So, what I've learned, struggling with many projects in the past, like Phantom is one of the great examples. Phantom was a L1 chain back in 2018, and our value proposition, it was a consensus as a service. But at that time, before Solana, so we wanted to bring like a consensus as a service, but with a higher finality. But we thought building like specific use cases on top might be a great way to start, but we were wrong on certain aspects. So for me, Openmesh, I want to focus on like something very, very small, tangible, which is a developer can host a website or host a database, and the only person can have access to that front end or the database is you. Because if you look at, everyone's familiar with Web3 space, how we treat assets, ERC assets or Bitcoin. The only person can have access to your assets is you, which is a private wallet. But if you think about like traditional cloud space, unfortunately in Web3 space as well, a lot of founders, because of a convenient layer, they go to AWS and GCP to host their front-end databases. Because this is the challenge, like if you look at in Web3 space as a whole, more than 80% critical infrastructure still hosting public clouds and privately owned corporations. So the question is, where's the decentralization? So to me, it's very important to focus on something that tangible, which is hosting a website, hosting your basic database, and then attach to a wallet. So you leverage like Ethereum security to activate your virtual machine or activate your private keys or your SSH key, which is the core function. And on top of that, you're building a layer like a really smart way to interact with your virtual machine. That's great, but then you have to have a layer on top, which is UX. Because people in Web3 space, sometimes we forget to focus on the user experience. So what we did, we treat all the infrastructure like templates. I took a lot of inspiration from how a web design industry evolved. So web design industry evolved before. If you want to build a website, it takes like a couple of months to design it. But today, if you want to build a website, go to Shopify, pick a template, go from ideation to production in like 5 minutes. So we took the same kind of inspiration when it comes to building infrastructure. So we have an app store, or we have a web-based console. You pick a template. If you want to host your website, pick up the whole infrastructure that you needed, and you go for deployment. And then the only person can have access to that virtual machine is you. So it's just a innovation slash focusing on the user experience, and focus on like one or two use cases can actually work really nicely.
Absolutely, and I think we've heard a lot about foundational infrastructure for DePIN now, and primitives that can be used in very interesting ways to solve technical problems that they have on the ground. I know that's part of the proposition, but Rosie, you're focused on DePIN aggregation, on liquidity, and maybe some of these DeFi-focused primitives as well. Maybe can you talk a little bit about how a DePIN project works with you, and the value proposition of working with an aggregator-based system versus kind of doing it on their own?
So I think because there's two sides of us. There is the demand aggregator machine, where other people join these networks to provision their compute resource. The other side is the server-side aggregator, where it's more of a to-developer product, is how to utilize these services provided by different DePIN stack more effectively. So to answer your question, I think for us, project working with us, DePIN project working with us, their benefits is they can get more nodes more effectively. We're acting as a growth engine for a lot of these DePIN projects, especially when they want to get out of their post-start phase, getting more nodes. They have to do their own marketing. They will have to incentivize people to join their network via one of their points or one of their future airdrops. For us, and then also at the same time, they will need to build a very user-friendly client-side application, like an extension or some of the application that we're seeing here these days. For average retail users or just commercial-grade compute users to join their network. But we're reinventing the wheels here. Every project needs everything that I just mentioned. Why not have an aggregator that can solve this problem for all the DePIN projects? And so that every DePIN project will focus on building their fundamental of leveraging these compute resources, joining their network, and provide good, solid services with, say, AWS or any centralized cloud providers. So for the liquidity or for the mining side of aggregation, we're providing value to projects that work with us, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheels for customer nodes acquisitions and for that. And then for the supply side, why do projects or application developers want to build using our SDK instead of using each of DePIN network providers' SDK directly? I mean, they can still interact with them. For example, if your app requires a very specific service that it needs to be decentralized, then yeah, there's probably doesn't really make sense, or maybe you can go directly to a DePIN network. But for us, we're taking an approach of more of a holistic approach, where we want services to start talking to each other. Different services provided by different DePIN networks to start talking to each other, so that we can create a service stack that's similar to how all the centralized cloud providers are doing. For example, if you're using AWS services, if you're using their compute and storage, it's connected. Like their data streams, a lot of the underlying architecture are already built in, so that data can flow in and out very natively without application developers build additional logic for them to talk to each other. But right now we're missing that element in DePIN. No one's coordinating with that data flowing from A to B or to C. When you're using more DePIN network for your application stack, the complexity actually, I think it's exponentially growing. And that's why we want to build an aggregator for server side as well. It's not just an aggregator, because aggregator sometimes it can be in the form of a marketplace. But when we talk about service aggregator, we want to do smart routing as well, right? We actually want to build to actually do a lot of the dirty work that can bring more demand into DePIN. And that's how we're taking the multi-DePIN approach.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, you've heard some underlying infrastructure approaches, you've heard some growth approaches. Solana is a little bit different because it's a layer one at the end of the day, and a big part of the business and the business model is really just the multi-project element across all sorts of projects. So, my question for you is a little bit different, which is how do you think about, actually incentivizing, or how do you think about creating an economic model that you need to attract DePIN projects to your chain? And in particular, there almost feels like there's this layer one war right now to get DePIN projects. What are Solana's secret weapons in that war, and how have you guys been winning as hard as you have?
Yeah, it's all me, definitely all me. No. So it's one thing I'll say that it's not is that it has very little to do with actual direct economics in the sense of financial incentives. Like for those of you who sort of have experienced the L1 or L2 war in some way, shape, or form, like one way in which this war is waged is that a project wants to build X, Y, and Z protocol. They will go and talk to like 10 L1s or L2s and basically figure out like who's going to pay me the most to build on the chain. If capital is like a big constraint for you, maybe that's the right way to go about it. I tend to be pretty skeptical of this, and we don't really play this game, so like we will never be the ones sort of giving you a financial incentive to build on Solana for a whole bunch of reasons. So what do we actually then focus our attention and our efforts on? It probably comes down to three things, and those three things are at the sort of highest level. One is Solana as a piece of technology. Two is Solana as an ecosystem, and then three is Solana as an economy. And so just to get into those a little bit, I think as a piece of technology, our focus is making sure that Solana just like lets you build the product that you want to build in the best way possible, in the easiest way possible. And so making sure that Solana is really, really cheap, really, really fast, actually fundamentally censorship resistant, like gives you the things that you want out of your blockchain, like those things we want Solana to do and we want to do in the space. So that's a huge technical effort from our end. Our engineering team is always looking for and getting feedback from people, especially DePIN projects that are building on Solana, to understand, hey, what challenges do you have with Solana as a piece of technology? How do we make sure that we iterate and improve the program? So that's one thing. And arguably today, actually not even arguably, just like sort of, if you look at the data, Solana is the most performant network handling the most amount of activity, and it's like not particularly close. So that's one. I think that one Solana is maybe relatively well known for. The other two I think are more interesting and nuanced. So if we talk about Solana as an ecosystem, at this point, I was actually looking at this data recently. If you sort of look at the market cap of the sort of relatively well-known DePIN projects, I think Solana right now, about 50% of the market cap in DePIN sits on Solana. And so that's a pretty meaningful number. And the sort of benefit of having that critical mass of builder, like DePIN builder activity in Solana, means that a lot of the tooling on Solana that one DePIN builder gets, the rest can copy. Helium in particular, I think, has been quite a good steward in this respect. They like open source, they've built a bunch of, for example, governance tooling for themselves and then open sourced it. So anyways, my point here is like Solana as an ecosystem, there's just a ton of tooling that already exists on the chain, whether it's tooling built by DePIN teams or the DeFi infrastructure on Solana, all of that stuff you just get for free. And I think that's a very powerful network effect. And then the last thing I'll say is Solana as an economy. I mean, ultimately in crypto, sort of it's fundamentally a financial system. And for that financial system to work really well, there's a bunch of stuff that you just need. So you need connections to the tier 1 exchanges. You need really good on and off ramps globally. You need liquidity, so you need sort of active and deep markets. And Solana has all of those things. And those things are very, very hard to build. And so that's something that DePIN projects, again, just get for free for building on Solana. So even though you're never going to get money to build on Solana, you get a ton of other things, and we think those things sort of far outweigh any direct financial incentive.
No, I totally agree. And similarly, shout out the Helium guys is honestly being one of those good sports that have figured a lot of this out early and have been super generous both with their time and with what they've built, and just allowing a lot of other people to use it in different ways too. With that, one of the last things questions I have for you guys, we've got about 7 minutes each, so maybe give each of you a couple minutes. Tell me about a project in your ecosystem or that you are a component to that you are really excited about, and tell us why you're so excited about it. We can start with Ranbir again, that'd be great.
Yeah, one of our core partners is this company called Dawn. So what they're building is, think of something like Helium, but for fixed wireless. So essentially they're providing home internet. And the reason I like them is because they have used essentially a new technology set to like this. Traditional home internet is delivered through cables, whether it's fiber optic or anything else. Now, if you want to deliver internet through that means, it's you need to dig up cables. It's not scalable. They figured out a new technology. They're doing it over wireless, and once they've figured it out, the new tech, they can actually serve internet at very low prices because they don't set up underlying connectivity infrastructure. I believe they have like 10x cost advantage over traditional ISPs in the US, and that's something I'm very excited about. The way we work together with Don is, so it's as an ISP, its core product is bandwidth. And they need to prove that they have capacity. Your neighbor is not stealing your bandwidth. How do you ensure that? So they're utilizing one of our core proofs called proof of bandwidth, which ensures that whatever statement is made about internet connectivity in your region is correct, and it's being shared in a fair.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Very different approach to Helium, solving similar fundamentally important problems. How about you next, Ash? Maybe a project that you're excited about that uses your solution or could use your solution?
I think one of the most inspiring one for me was the immutable storage and immutable databases and immutable compute. Because someone can live in, let's say, Bali or Sydney, Australia, and being able to have a virtual machine where you can host your website and no one can shut it down, not even the government can shut down your website. That's a very good value proposition. I like that idea. Something that we are currently working on, it's basically addressing the node operators' economic viability. So what that means, if you look at our space, Web3 space, right? So we want decentralization. So what that means, every chain, all L1 chains or L2 chains or any project has nodes, you need independent verifiers providing that computation, verification for the project. If you don't have enough nodes in the network, then it's not decentralized. So I looked at this problem for like many years, especially with Phantom time, because Phantom during bear market, node operators leave because the token price is low and their AWS bill, for the convenient purposes, they run most of their nodes, let's say for AWS. If you're paying like $500 a month or $200 a month, and if you cannot even recover that $500 or $200 a month by receiving incentive from the network as a node operator, so the economic viability for the node operators is really bad, which means, we treat our ecosystem as very important. We have to recognize node operators have a very important role to play. Because if you don't address that economic viability problem, then we have a fewer node operators in our ecosystem, which means the chains get centralized and also chains can scale better. So one thing that we're doing, so we basically aggregate bare metal servers around the world. So we work with Equinix, Volta, High Velocity, these are data centers. We also work with independent data centers to pool like specific servers and then bring that as a node as a service. So if you were to let's say Ethereum, if you were to run an Ethereum node on AWS, if you pay like around $280 in the US region, imagine if you can bring that cost down to like $10. So we work with a lot of chains like Chainlink. So we're going through Solana, by the way. Solana, your specs is ridiculous, so we have to work with that on that specs. But relatively decent specs, like we're talking about 64 GB RAM or below, maybe a couple of terabyte of storage requirements. So we managed to bring the cost down to like 80 to 90%. So what that means, the node operators can actually, at least for the first time, they could at least calculate based on that base price. So it's something that I'm really excited.
Sure. Only a couple minutes left, maybe 1 minute each if you guys don't mind. What are you excited about in your ecosystem that you want to talk about quickly?
My most excited partner is Parasol. It's definitely going to be Parasol because for our service aggregator to actually work as a stack, we need a SLA service level agreement decentralized in a way. So they're providing a service that's going to be acting like you think Oracle or the SLA layer, allowing us to provide a good SDK service so that we can bring more demand to people. So yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate you giving this time constraint. One more. You have a lot of children, but who are the
I know this is a fraught question, but I think what I'll go with, because this is something I've been spending a ton of time recently on, is a project in the decentralized energy space. I think this is sort of a sector that I expect to see a lot of activity in the next 6 to 12 months. And in particular, I'm pretty excited about a product called Fuse. So basic idea here is energy company, they're the kind of company where you can, if you have a home, you can go to them and actually, they can be your utility. And what's the Web3 component of this? There's two things. One is token incentives in order to install solar panels and batteries in your home, so you can both sort of meet your own energy needs with this kind of solar and battery infrastructure, but also potentially give energy to the grid when it's needed. And potentially also draw energy from the grid, because the energy world is crazy, sometimes energy prices are negative. And so the grid actually wants you to use the energy. So there's tokens for installing what are called these distributed energy resources. And the second thing, and this is the one that I actually think is more fun, is it's sort of cultivating this behavior amongst homeowners of becoming mini energy traders, of actually tuning when you run appliances, when you spend your energy, in order to optimize your bill. So, instead of running your dishwasher at 7 p.m. when everyone's at home running the AC and power prices are through the roof, like maybe you should run your dishwasher at like 12 p.m. when no one's at home and it's like way cheaper. And because it's the sort of person who's supplying you the energy is paying less for it, they can pass on some of that savings to you in the form of token rewards. And so I actually think there's like a really powerful combination of narratives and substance here. It's like climate and sort of eco-friendly energy, plus token rewards for gamifying how you interact with your household appliances. I think it's just like really, really cool. So I'm quite excited to see how this turns out.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the energy plays as well. There's a bunch of them coming to market, and Fuse is definitely one of the market leaders. And awesome to hear that they're building on Solana. So, with that, guys, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for making it out. Give it up for our panelists very quickly, if you don't mind. And we'll be around for a little bit if you want to chat afterwards.
Thank you.